I came to catch a raccoon, but left with an obsession. I never thought it would go this far. She was my best friend's mom. It was supposed to be just a normal evening, a dark basement, a simple dinner. But one small touch, one mistimed glance, and everything changed. Welcome to a story that's dangerous, intoxicating, and deeply unsettling. This isn't some fairy tale romance. There's no perfect ending, just raw truth and emotions that had been buried for far too long. Have you ever fallen into something you knew you shouldn't have started, but couldn't stop? Do you believe that a single moment can change the course of your entire life? Do you think one look can feel like betrayal? If any of those questions hit something deep inside you, this story is for you. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories that reach into the quiet, forbidden corners of human emotion, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that are absolutely real. Hello, I'm Jake, and I'm 25 years old. As I stood in my apartment, the aroma of reheated pizza wafting through the air, my phone suddenly buzzed, revealing a call from an unfamiliar number. I nearly allowed it to slip into voicemail, yet an instinct urged me to pick up the call. A woman's voice called out, "Jake, this is Julia, the mother of Sean." I sat up, taken aback. "Greetings, is all well with you?" "Apologies for the interruption," she remarked hastily. "It wouldn't be worth the call if it weren't peculiar. A creature lurks in the shadows of the basement. It's producing an overwhelming cacophony, and I find myself at a loss for what steps to take next. Sean mentioned that you excel in this area." I blinked, uncertain whether I had unwittingly signed up for a role in pest control. "A creature? I believe it's a raccoon," she remarked, her tone tinged with frustration. "I attempted to reach animal control, but they are several hours away." I find myself on the brink of unraveling. For a fleeting moment, I paused, then seized my keys. I shall make my way there shortly. As I drove into their driveway, she stood outside, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, pacing in small, restless strides by the porch. Her hair was gathered into a relaxed ponytail, and she donned an oversized sweatshirt paired with leggings and running shoes, as if she had been in the midst of something laid back before the entire affair commenced. Her expression softened slightly upon catching sight of me. "Thank God!" she exclaimed, a laugh escaping her lips. "I apologize. I realize this isn't precisely what you anticipated when you forged a friendship with my son." "No problem," I replied as I exited the vehicle. "Do you possess a flashlight?" "Indeed, and feel free to grab some gloves if you desire." She guided me through the corridor to the door that descended into the basement. The sound reached my ears, a low thump that scratched at the silence, something stirring near the distant wall. She passed me a headlamp and a set of sturdy leather gloves, as if this were a familiar routine for her. "Just promise me one thing," she said, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Avoid contracting rabies." A smile graced my lips. "I shall endeavor to give it my utmost effort." I descended cautiously, each step deliberate, my heart racing more than I had anticipated. After a brief interlude of silence, with the gentle sweep of light and a few softly uttered words of encouragement, I caught sight of the raccoon lurking behind an aged cabinet. I successfully pried the window open, nudging it toward the exit with a broom handle, and observed as it scrambled out, as if it had somewhere pressing to go. Upon my return to the upper floor, my hands bearing the evidence of my labor yet filled with a sense of victory, she presented me with a refreshing glass of lemonade. "You're a lifesaver," she remarked. We lingered on the back porch as I savored it. The atmosphere was serene, punctuated only by the distant calls of birds and the sporadic bark echoing from a nearby street. She reclined in the chair, a palpable sense of ease washing over her as the clamor faded, leaving the house enveloped in tranquility once more. She mentioned that Sean was away for the weekend, off on a ski trip with his girlfriend, and that she had been attempting to tackle the basement cleanup, but had found herself with an unanticipated visitor instead. I didn't inquire further than that. She had a certain wit about her, a dry sense of humor that was quite amusing. She animatedly gestured as she recounted her days playing volleyball in college. The day drew to a close, marked by nothing more than idle chatter and the refreshing taste of lemonade. Yet something lingered. From that moment on, she greeted me with a wave each time I passed by. There were moments when I found myself at Sean's house, anticipating his return, and she would request my assistance, whether it was to retrieve an item from the attic, unstick a window, or elevate a box that was just out of her grasp. At times, she would offer me the remnants of her cooking, a result of her generous portions. Initially, it seemed like mere assistance, something I didn't ponder deeply. Yet in retrospect, it feels as though a quiet awakening was unfolding within both of us. It began in a quiet, understated manner. Sean would be upstairs, immersed in his gaming world with his headset snugly in place, while I found myself in the kitchen, assisting her in the task of changing a light bulb. She would call out to Jake, asking for assistance with the cabinet door, and I would trail behind her into the laundry room, the sound of Sean's music thumping from behind a closed door. She consistently insisted on providing me with a meal afterward. Sandwiches, pasta, grilled fish. She remarked it was the least she could offer. As I spent time with her, I gradually uncovered layers of her personality. She possessed a remarkable ability to reveal just the right amount, never crossing the line into oversharing. She shared with me that Sean's father had died a few years back and that life had been quite challenging for some time following that loss. She had begun to immerse herself in longer hours, seeking refuge from the weight of her thoughts. She shared with me the news of her daughter Melanie, who had recently completed her graduate studies and relocated to the East Coast. She reflects on her father, a once gifted classical guitarist whose melodies have faded into the shadows of Alzheimer's, leaving behind echoes of a life filled with music. Reflecting on the shoulders she injured during a volleyball tournament in Spain, the lingering ache returned with each drop of rain, and I simply absorbed the words. On a serene afternoon, I found myself assisting her in the delicate task of transplanting lavender by the side fence. The parched earth lay beneath us as we knelt, our hands stained with the dust of the ground. As she leaned to sweep the hair from her face, her fingers inadvertently traced a line of dirt across her cheek. I chuckled softly and instinctively extended my thumb to brush it away. She paused for a fleeting moment, our gazes intertwined. Then a smile graced her lips, petite, hesitant, yet authentic. It was the inaugural moment I laid eyes upon it. The transition. As the atmosphere around us grew heavy with an unspoken tension, it became clear that our connection transcended mere camaraderie and the simple act of sharing meals. Later that day, as I prepared to depart, she lingered by the sliding glass door and remarked, "You've been truly kind to me, Jake." I merely shrugged. "It's of no consequence. It holds significance." Neither of us spoke further, yet that night sleep eluded me. The memory lingered in my mind, her hand grazing against mine as we both reached for the same trowel. Her laughter hung in the air after I recounted that ridiculous tale of Aaron dozing off during the exam. Her gaze lingered on me, a silent rebellion against the unspoken rules that bound her, yet she seemed unable to resist. From that moment forward, an unspoken understanding lingered between us, though we chose not to define it. Not at this moment. It was akin to perching on the precipice of a great abyss, toes gripping the edge, poised in anticipation of whether the other would take the leap first. Yet neither of us possessed wings. It was a Thursday evening, and I lingered longer than I ought to have. Aaron had ventured out with friends for a bar crawl, or perhaps a trivia night, while I had arrived earlier to assist Julia in moving boxes from the attic. Just some books on decorations, nothing too significant. A handful of bins marked with the name Melanie's Belongings. For nearly an hour we toiled, handing items down the slender pull-down ladder, as motes of dust danced in the angled sunlight streaming through the small attic window. Subsequently, she filled our glasses with wine. We settled onto the living room floor, our backs resting against the couch, laughter bubbling up as we recalled the moment when one of the boxes had burst open, scattering a jumble of old Halloween costumes around us. I lifted a witch's hat and placed it upon my head. She erupted into laughter, a snort escaping her, and then quickly covered her mouth in feigned shock. It seemed effortless, exceedingly simple. Eventually, the laughter gave way to soft murmurs of conversation concerning the realm of music. Remorse. Life often unfolds in ways that defy our expectations. I confided in her that I had never truly known my mother. She departed from this world when I was just 6 years old. She shared that Aaron's father was once a different man. I used to spend more time at home. Once, I regarded her as if she held significance. People drift, she murmured softly. At times, the distance grows so vast that it becomes impossible to mend, often without your awareness. I cast a glance in her direction then. Her wine glass hung loosely from her fingers, a mere afterthought. With her legs gracefully folded beneath her, the gentle glow of the lamp illuminated the golden strands of her hair. In that moment, her gaze met mine. The glance was fleeting, yet it held all the significance it required. I leaned in gradually, anticipating the sensation of a retreat, a signal to halt. It never arrived. Our lips brushed gently, if only for a fleeting moment. On the other hand, extended. Her hand glided to the side of my face, fingers tracing my jaw as if she were committing it to memory. The glass tumbled softly onto the carpet beside us, left behind in the moment. There was no urgency, merely an unvoiced tension bubbling beneath the surface. She drew in her breath, unsteady at first. I am acutely aware of the peril that lies ahead. Yet neither of us took a step back. That evening, I lingered away from home until the clock struck past midnight. We did not share a bed. Not at that time. Yet a change occurred. A fissure emerged, revealing what lay beneath. Yet we left it ajar. The ensuing days brimmed with an unspoken tension, the kind that lingers in the air, palpable and heavy, even in moments of silence. I still made my way here, continued to assist with various matters, yet the atmosphere felt transformed. Her attire was composed of gentler fabrics. As she glided by, the scent of her perfume hung in the air, a haunting reminder of her presence. When I turned to leave, her fingers grazed my wrist, lingering for a heartbeat longer than necessary. A week later, we truly crossed a line for the first time. It was far from clumsy. It bore no guilt. In that moment, it seemed as though we had both been yearning for this for an eternity. Yet, as is often the case with exquisite treasures taken in secret, it bore a price of its own. Following that night, once the boundary had been irrevocably crossed, events unfolded in a manner I had not anticipated. There was no tempest of remorse. No uncomfortable space. We found ourselves settling into a rhythm that seemed effortless, perilous, yet inherent. She remained largely silent on the matter. I did not either. Yet the way her hand slipped into mine beneath the table, the gentle softening of her smile when Erin's gaze was elsewhere, spoke volumes. At times, Julia would leave the back door ajar, a small invitation to the world beyond, invited me to visit during the calm moments, spoke as if it were of no consequence. Yet we were both aware of the truth lurking beneath the surface. Her house transformed in that moment, the lights dimmed, and a constant stream of soft, slow melodies filled the air, as if she craved a gentle presence to accompany her. She donned robes that hung lightly from her figure, loosely tied, and greeted me with a smile from the kitchen upon my arrival, as if this had always been our routine. Our conversations never ventured into the realm of what lies ahead. Words such as love have never crossed my lips. It wasn't that sort of affair. The stillness enveloped the surroundings, developed, something crafted amidst prolonged pauses and gentle breaths in spaces that were never intended for such moments. At times, we would simply recline in bed, our bodies turned away from one another, yet still connected by the gentle brush of our skin. She would reminisce about her 20s. Once, she harbored dreams of becoming a photojournalist. The transformation of life. No one truly prepares you for the moment when individuals cease to recognize you as a person and begin to perceive only the roles you embody. Mother, employee, housekeeper. I paid attention. I shared with her words that had remained unspoken for years, reflecting on the quietude of my father's presence during my formative years. I often found myself in a state of anticipation, longing for the moment when I would finally transform into someone deserving of attention. Her hand glided across the sheets, fingers weaving through my hair with a gentle touch. She declared it as if it were the simplest truth in existence. The most challenging aspect wasn't the task at hand, but rather the surprising ease with which it unfolded. In the quiet hours of early morning, when Erin was either out on her runs or lost in slumber, I began to slip away. At times, I would choose to park a few streets away, just to be on the safe side. She would acknowledge me in the corridor, her hair still moist from the shower, the robe wrapped tightly around her. We exchanged few words, merely navigating around one another as if we had rehearsed this dance countless times before. Perhaps that was the very thing that instilled fear in us both, for in due time, the world began to awaken. With the conclusion of his internship, Erin found himself at home more often, his presence now a daily occurrence. His presence transformed the entire landscape. The door remained ajar. Yet I ceased my passage through it. We became wary. Brief encounters, no prolonging, minimal conversation, heightened tension, and certainly not the favorable sort. It was akin to residing beneath a ceiling marred by an elusive leak, perpetually anticipating the moment when a single drop would descend, betraying your presence. One afternoon, I caught sight of Erin outside, diligently clearing out the garage, shirt discarded, headphones firmly in place. He bore a striking resemblance to his mother, with a defined jawline and identical eyes. He gestured with a wave. I returned the gesture with a wave. That evening, Julia remained silent, and the following night, her phone stayed quiet as well. The stillness lingered. At last, she sent me a message. Only a single line. He will not be returning to school next semester. I chose not to reply. What could possibly be expressed? We were acutely aware that the stakes had shifted. In the time before, we resided in a realm that lay just beyond the reach of consequence. Yet Aaron was perpetually close at hand. Each door groaned with an unsettling intensity. Each shadow bore fangs. Yet we pressed on relentlessly, not at this moment. Our next encounter was hurried, a fleeting moment in the midst of chaos. A slender opening taken while Aaron was away on a grocery run. She flung the door open and yanked me inside swiftly, as if the very walls had ears to eavesdrop. Our words were few. There was no necessity for us to do so. Her kiss held a sense of urgency, devoid of romance. Simply forlorn, as if she required a reminder that this was indeed reality, that it had truly occurred. Afterward, we found ourselves in the hallway, leaning against the wall, our breaths harmonizing in a quiet rhythm. "I despise this," she murmured, "this stealthy maneuvering, this anticipation." "I am aware." She leaned her head gently against my shoulder. "We must exercise greater caution." Yet, mere caution would prove insufficient. In a fortnight, it was on the verge of occurring. I had arrived to assist her in replacing the ceiling light in the laundry room. A brief assignment awaits. Aaron, she mentioned, had ventured out to retrieve an item from the hardware store and would be absent for some time. We believed we had ample time ahead of us. Perched on the ladder, screwdriver clutched in my hand, my attention was only half committed when her gasp broke through the air. From her vantage point by the front window, she caught sight of his car as it made its way into the driveway. He returned ahead of schedule. Time was a fleeting shadow. I hurriedly descended, cleaned my hands on a rag, and dashed through the back door, my heart racing in my throat. I ran alongside the house, slipping behind the line of hedges just as Aaron emerged from the car. He failed to notice my presence. He whistled softly, a bag of garden soil slung over his shoulder, humming as if it were merely another sun-drenched afternoon, as if nothing had changed. As if his mother hadn't pressed her lips to another man's just moments before. I remained in that position until he had completely entered. With that, I turned and departed. Swift, stirred to the core. On that particular night, Julia made the call. Her voice had a fragile quality. "I believed he wouldn't return until 5, I acknowledged. "It's perfectly fine." Yet it was not. We both sensed it, the change, the dread slithering in where once resided the comfort of warmth. She began to withdraw, not in a rush, but slowly and with intention. Her messages became more concise. Her voice on the phone had shed its softness. The lengthy mornings vanished. The small gestures that greeted me upon my arrival faded away. Though her lips remained sealed, I sensed the unspoken words gathering in the air around us. "This cannot continue." The last time I beheld her in such a way, truly saw her, she presented me with a jar of honey from the market, claiming it was local. Her fingers grazed against mine as she handed it over, yet it lacked the warmth of an invitation. It seemed to be a gentle conclusion. In the aftermath of the narrow escape, time seemed to stretch and slow to a crawl. Not in a way that feels overly theatrical or film-like, merely a subtle disintegration. Our daily exchanges have come to a halt. I ceased my visits unless Sean was present, and even then the atmosphere felt more insubstantial, more buoyant, as if we were engaged in a delicate charade, acting as though it had never transpired. The key that once lay beneath the mat had vanished. I wouldn't have utilized it anyway. She ceased to initiate contact, and when I took the step to reach out, her responses grew increasingly delayed. Warm, yet aloof. I refrained from pressing her. On certain afternoons, I would catch a glimpse of her on the porch, with Sean by her side, either unloading groceries or tending to her herbs with care. She would wave and I would respond with a wave of my own. That was the moment. Perhaps that was its only intended purpose all along. The most painful aspect wasn't the loss of moments, the stolen kisses, or the quiet beauty of early mornings. It was the fading of that gaze she once directed at me, as if I were the sole individual in the room who truly understood her essence, more than merely Sean's mother. More than merely a figure maintaining composure. However, Julia, radiant. Amusing, frayed at the edges, authentic. For a time, I was the sole witness to that side of her. In that moment, I was simply Jake once more, Sean's companion. The man who once lent a hand to a raccoon. The conclusion unfolded without any grand flourish. There was no emotional revelation. Only silence and time. Several weeks later, I encountered them at the grocery store. Sean maneuvering the cart. Julia chuckled at his words, her head tilting in that unmistakable way. She caught sight of me and offered a courteous nod. I returned the nod. That was everything. That night, I sat in my apartment, lights off, contemplating how the quiet endings resonate the longest. Julia never inquired whether I felt her absence. I never inquired whether she ever considered me. Such inquiries beckoned for responses that were beyond our means to provide. In the quiet hours of the night, I find myself recalling the way her voice danced around my name, a gentle whisper that lingered in the air. Her hand would glide across my back, effortlessly, as if compelled by an unspoken connection. I often ponder whether she reflects on those moments, yet I refrain from inquiring. Life continued its relentless march forward. She remained by Sean's side. He was present more frequently now. Here it is, enthralled. The house seemed to have settled back into its familiar rhythm. She appeared at peace, perhaps even joyful. I ceased my attempts to unravel its meaning. I began taking on additional shifts at the bookstore, embarked on weekend drives to the uncharted. I shall allow my hair to flourish and grow long. I've crafted a vision to depart from the city in the coming year. Our conversations have faded into silence. Occasionally, I find myself walking by her home, catching a glimpse of her engrossed in a book by the window. At times, I find myself lacking. Yet, in those fleeting moments when I catch her eye and she offers that subtle smile, I am certain she recalls as well. And in some way, that suffices.